Well, to be honest, I don't know how relevant this segment will be to everybody, but it is Sunday night, and I am in the mood for talking about supernatural beings, God, creation, etc. And we have this post from Colin Wright, which has gotten some traction with a lot of people, because it seems to be a dig at creationist theory or any kind of supernatural concept. But I will pause and say, separating Colin Wright's arguments from my arguments, I don't intend to debate someone who is not here, but I will use the posts he made as I perceive them to argue for the existence of God. Or I should say the potentiality that God exists. And I'll break down what I think and what I mean. And we'll start with the idea of how life began on Earth. Now, Colin Wright has a tweet. Many are calling him an atheist. They're saying it's taxing and that he's misunderstanding. And he's made his arguments in kind. I disagree with him because I think that they are one-dimensional statements that lack, they may be scientific statements, but they lack any kind of philosophical understanding beyond base science. And so I think there's a lot to be left wanting. Me, my friends, I am not a Christian. I was raised Catholic briefly, but I would consider myself to be more like deist, I guess. I don't know enough about the idea of deism to want to fully claim that, but I do believe there is a God, and I will explain why. And I've had these conversations before. This video could probably be 12 hours long, to be completely honest. And so forgive me if there are things that I can't get to in the 10 to 20 minutes that I spend on this video. But let's start with some arguments. First, Colin Wright says, just because we don't know how life began on Earth naturally doesn't mean we must give equal weight to the possibility of a supernatural origin. My question at first when I read this was, what does that mean, supernatural? Because I don't believe in the supernatural at all. It's a meaningless statement. If 300 years ago, you had someone standing atop a hill and they said, I have received word from a greater being, the dam down the hillside. Look, imagine there's a group of people on a mountain and a guy stands up and says, the Lord hath spoken and the dam will explode. And then all of a sudden they watch this dam just blow up. And they're like, how did he know that? Well, there's a natural explanation, right? Sure. Someone told him in advance, it's a trick. He planted bombs, counted the time with his timepiece or whatever it is that he had, and he knew it was going to happen. Natural explanation. What if he said 500 years ago, I will, standing atop this mountain, strike thunder down on you, my enemy. And all of a sudden there was a loud boom, and the guy just drops dead. That would be supernatural. How did he do it? There's no explanation. Well, there is now. Simple. Just the gun. Now, okay, to be fair, 500 years ago, they had guns. Okay, so not sniper rifles. But if they'd be like, there's no musket anywhere. I mean, how did this happen? And you had a guy with a sniper rifle. But, maybe it's more fair to say go back 1,000 years before the existence of guns and things. You get the point. The point is, it would be deemed supernatural a long time ago. I mean, look, I've got a floating UFO sitting in front of me. And to any alchemist in the 1500s, I know I'm kidding, but yeah, they did alchemy, right? They'd be like, it floats. How? Now, of course, they understood magnets and things like this, but there are a lot of things we have today that defy reason. And probably a cell phone is a good example. Is it not supernatural? I have before me a tablet. It is a stone for which the future can be seen and information gleaned. Yeah, well, we know it's not supernatural. My point is ultimately this. When he says, just because we don't know how life began on Earth naturally doesn't mean we have to give equal weight to the possibility of supernatural origin, that's a meaningless statement. And this is the issue I take with a lot of atheists in that it seems too one-dimensional. I believe that for a lot of atheists, not all, it is very much so rooted in earthly perceptions without a concept of beyond. And what I mean by beyond is not supernatural, heaven, God, Jesus, or anything like that. I mean, we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know a lot. I responded to Colin Wright. Define supernatural. And, Colin, are you kidding me? He said not natural. Are you kidding me, dude? You see, this is why I don't even bother half the time. Using the word in the definition of the word is the laziest thing you could possibly do. If you didn't want to respond, you could have just ignored me. So I grabbed the definition of supernatural and said, which reads, of a manifestation or event attributed to some force beyond scientific understanding or the laws of nature, a supernatural being. So he responds, sure, something outside the laws of nature. To which I responded, so you know them all? Well, the reality is we don't. The discovery of the electromagnetic spectrum only goes back, like, what are we looking at, 130 years, if that, technically? We didn't even know. We thought we could, okay, let's start here. Did y'all know that air was discovered? Of course it was. People at first were like, there's nothing. There's nothing here, right? It is just void. Turns out it's not void. There's gas. We exist in an atmosphere. How did they figure that out? Well, long time ago, there was a guy. So they used to have these little bronze orbs, little spheres with holes in the bottom and a tube coming out. What you do is you dunk the thing in water, put your thumb over the back and lift it up. Then you hold it over your head and let go, and water pours over your body. It was an easier way than scooping water and splashing on yourself to get a large volume of water to pour onto yourself. So one day this dude, he'd be like, hey, wait a minute. How come when I put the thing in the water and put my thumb over it, the water don't come out until I take my thumb off? So then he says, I got an idea. I'm going to put my thumb over it first, then put it in the water, and then pick it up. Hey, ain't no water inside. And then he realized that, there's something in there. Something is blocking the water from going in the little shower thingy. And so thus air was discovered. That there was actually some kind of gas that could be contained and manipulated. We didn't know exactly what it was, but it was one of the fundamental elements of old. Fire, earth, water, air. And so they understood wind was blowing on them. But the concept of air in an atmosphere came when they were like, and this also is the basic components of discovery of a vacuum. That is, when he would, when you lift the water up, the water can't come out until he removes his thumb, allowing the air to occupy that space. And so he was like, something has to be in there to replace the water. And if that thing is in there, the water can't get in. There's something there. If you go back far enough, outside the laws of nature could mean anything. So I'll put it this way. For humans to have discovered the electromagnetic spectrum, not really understanding what it was so long ago, and still barely understanding gravity, to be fair, could it be possible that there is we think we know in science. That's what we usually say. The fundamental forces of nature, which, I don't know, you've got, what is it, like the strong and weak force, the nuclear, I don't know, electro, weak, whatever. I'm not a physicist, okay? Colin probably knows this stuff better than me. However, philosophically, we must entertain, as scientists, that there are fundamental forces we have not yet discovered. We take a look at the Large Hadron Collider and the projects we're working on, and it is quite literally to try and discover fundamental particles that we have not yet seen. We need to reach certain energy levels. So the Higgs boson was a huge deal, the God particle, they called it, a fundamental particle by which other things are suspended or whatever. For all we know right now, there's quite literally something called a God force. Yeah, I don't know, we can call it whatever we want. Let's call it the spatial soul force. I can make up anything I want. Did you know that there exists a force of nature in which life is ensouled? That is, there is a fundamental particle by which there is life. Now, is that supernatural or not? My point is simply this. If the explanation from Christians or otherwise is that God put his hands together, went, and then all of a sudden life appeared, and he says that's supernatural and meaningless, I say, no. It's absurdity to a great degree, which, to be fair, Colin says, if the probability is 1/1000%, why entertain it? Well, because people are allowed to make hypotheses. That's it. We don't know, and we struggle to learn. It is through the process of making up these ideas that we inch closer towards the truth. This is the problem I have with scientists who are like, do not entertain any idea. I'm like, what? Let's try this. Is it natural that Jesus died and was resurrected? Why not? Well, because dead people don't come back to life. Well, what do you mean? We know how bodies function with neurons firing in the brain and blood pumping and iron oxide and all of these things. We know the fundamental element of life. Why would it not be possible to re-imbue dead cells with life? Nay, it certainly is possible. We just don't quite know how to do it well. We've done a lot of things, brain surgery, things otherwise seemed impossible. So if there is a God, a all-powerful being, is it natural within the laws of nature that he is the creator of all life? The answer is yes. And hence you have people who believe in simulation theory. That is, we exist in a programmed, created construct universe, not too dissimilar to a simulation as we know it. And that a higher power of sorts, be it an individual or a great body of individuals in what someone would refer to as base reality, created us. But that all follows our understanding of nature. So it's not supernatural at all. This is the problem I have with the supernatural. No, what you're basically saying is any hypothesis outside of what we think we know today is there's no point in considering. That's not true at all. Someone at some point, let's just play the stupid game, Galileo. The sun revolved around the earth. And he was like, nah, I don't think so. And they said, you're crazy. That's wrong. We revolve around the sun? What is this garbled nonsense? It's stupid to assume we know everything, and it's stupid to assume that the supernatural could even exist. Because if a genie appeared before me right now and folded his arms and blinked, and a cheeseburger appeared before me, I wouldn't say it's magic and supernatural without explanation. I'd say, how is it done? And let's say it's magic. Let's say it's literally, you know what I like here? Doctor Strange, one of my favorite movies. Doctor Strange is talking to the Ancient One, and she's explaining magic to him, and she says, the ancients referred to this as a spell, but if that offends your modern sensibilities, you can call it a program, the code of the universe. What I love about Doctor Strange as a character in the Marvel Universe is that he's not doing magic. He knows so well the nature of reality itself that he can exploit the code of reality to make things happen. So I'll give you an example of this in video games. I watched a video recently of it was how to win Mario 3 glitch. And what he does is he runs around and does weird things, and then all of a sudden just teleports to the credits. Why? Because the actions he was taking was writing to memory, effectively writing code inadvertently. There's another example where in Super Mario World for the SNES, on the console with a controller, let me actually pull this one up. This one's fascinating. Writing Flappy Bird in Mario was revolutionary. SNES code injection.
Welcome back, Seth Bling here. A little over a year ago, I became the first person to complete a Super Mario World credits warp on the Super Nintendo console using a route created by Jeff W356. Yesterday, I became the first human to do something much crazier on console. I used a series of Super Mario World glitches to inject 331 bytes of processor instructions into system RAM. It was the source code for Flappy Bird. I did this using standard, unmodded Super Nintendo hardware.
Look at this.
While this kind of thing has been done before by feeding pre-recorded controller inputs into a console from a computer, no human has ever completed this kind of exploit until now.
So let me simplify this. I assume most of you understand, but by making Mario run around, let me jump ahead, right? Let's see. Here you go.
Next, I performed a glitch called power-up incrementation 3 times. Power-up incrementation is a glitch that takes advantage of Yoshi block duplication and some poorly written spinning brown platform code to increment Mario's power-up state. Normally, Mario's power-up state takes on a value between 0 and 3, where 0 is small, 1 is big, 2 is cape, and 3 is fire. By incrementing 3 times from Fire Mario, we arrive at power-up state 6, which is normally unobtainable and has some odd behavior. Whenever you collect a power-up, the game looks up a memory address containing some code to run based on your current power-up state. When you have an invalid power-up state like this, it can start running code from places other than the game cartridge.
Okay, so most of you have played Mario. If you haven't, let me explain. I assume you did. Mario is a little Italian plumber. He eats a mushroom and he grows large. He can then get, in Super Mario World, a feather, which gives him a cape and he can fly with it, which I don't quite understand, but fine, whatever. Or a fire flower, which I'm assuming he eats, but I guess in the cartoon he touches, and then he can throw fireballs. That is power-up states 1, 2, and 3. As he's pointed out, you're not supposed to go beyond that. But by exploiting a glitch, which literally exists in the code of the game, he gets Mario to power-up level 6. This creates weird things within the game. Would you call it unnatural? Honest question. The code of the game is clear. 99.999% of players are going to run around, eat mushrooms, and jump on turtles, punching bricks or whatever. But would you call it unnatural in the game that he has obtained something that is hard to obtain? The answer is no. It exists within the code of the game. It is possible, and he did it on the console. He didn't have any magic powers. He didn't blink with a genie. He literally played the game as the game existed and was able to affect the internal memory of the game and create a circumstance in which he produced Flappy Bird. So let's jump to the end.
But it also let me verify that the bootloader was working correctly. At this point, I iteratively wrote 331 bytes of processor instructions into unused RAM. Move to location, spin jump, move to location, spin jump 331 times. This payload was...
I want to pause real quick, too. The amazing thing is I think he had to write a code that gave him the coordinates to where he needed to jump so that he could inject the memory. It's pretty wild.
By P4+2, and it was the source code for Flappy Bird. Finally, I performed the last spin jump, which wrote the last byte, and made the game stop running Super Mario World's code and start running the injected Flappy Bird code. P4+2 went to a lot of trouble to make the Flappy Bird payload as compact as possible.
That's crazy.
Both to minimize the amount of time it would require for me to inject it, and also to minimize the chance of error during the injection process.
Okay, so as I was saying, in Doctor Strange, if you watch that movie and you see him like move his hands and then like lights appear and things happen, understand it like this. The purpose, the lore of Doctor Strange is that he understands the source code of reality so well that he can inject code and control the program to do things he wants to do. In fact, it has been argued by quite many that Doctor Strange is the most powerful comic book character ever. I like Doctor Strange as a character. It's fun. So here's my point. If we exist in a reality with rules and laws, is the argument that the laws of physics are perfect and can never be exploited. Maybe we live in such a perfect, controlled, confined system that natural law is so limited, there will never be anything that we could describe as supernatural. I don't see it that way. In this game, everything this guy did with Mario exists within the rules of the game. The code is perfect. Just because he's able to inject other code and change the parameters does not in any way mean the game is imperfect. The code exists, the game functions, and you can do things that are unintended. I'm a big fan of games where you don't got to play the game the way they expect you to. For example, Human Fall Flat, if you've ever seen it. You're a little guy and you run around and you've got to like press buttons and move blocks to open doors to get to the exit. I never do that. What I love about the game is beating the level in some way they did not intend for you to do. But you're still allowed to beat it, so it's not cheating. The goal of the game is get from point A to point B. They give you a series of puzzles to overcome, and I can say, I'm going to do something else. And I do. And it's fun. It's fun to bypass the rules that they've created. So let me put it this way. If there is a God, and you do not understand him, to argue that it is a supernatural explanation is to me an absurdity. I am not saying that the origin of life is God. The origin of life could be within the parameters of the universe created by a God, life emerged. And God went, hey, would you look at that? I didn't see that one coming. I doubt it. I actually believe that there is purpose. I believe that there's a function to the reality that we're in. I don't know what it is. I wouldn't presume to know, but let me wrap up with my explanation of reality and God and my views. So you take a look at what we think we know in science, and it's quite limited, is it not? Well, we think there was a Big Bang. We don't know for sure. And math tends to point to it. The universe's expansion is speeding up. Some theorize a white hole is on the other side of the black hole, which birthed the universe. So the Big Bang theory is a singularity, and then there's an explosion of some sort, and everything starts flying out in random directions or, expanding rapidly. And this starts creating the denser elements of the universe, and we are drifting towards chaos. That is the heat death of the universe. There are some hypotheses that it's not actually a singularity that exploded, but there's a white hole on the other side of a black hole. That is, there is something sucking in matter and then blasting it out into our universe. Thus, that was what the Big Bang is. There are some theories that the universe is a multidimensional membrane, M theory, and I think they're at like 13 dimensions. I'm not a physicist, so forgive me, I'm probably wrong. But that we exist in a 3 to 5th dimensional pocket, and I'll explain. We have discernibly 4 dimensions. We have forward, backward, left, right, up, and down. But time is a dimension for which we can't move through. So the best way to explain time actually as a spatial dimension is imagine you are falling down a hole. You are falling endlessly. You can move left, right, forward, and backward by manipulating everything around you, but you cannot control upward movement. You will never go up. You have no means of going up, but you certainly have the means of going forward, backward, left, and right. You can swim in the air or whatever, or you can tilt and the air will push you back and forth. Imagine time that way. We are falling through time with no means of launching ourselves in the opposite direction. Thus, here we are. But to be fair, existence and memory and mind and all of that rely on our falling through time. That is, as we move, things grow and change, and time is a requirement of that. So theoretically, if you were to go back in time existing in your own body, you'd just erase your own memories and you'd exist in a moment. So it's like you wouldn't even know you did. Theoretically, then you could argue that there is no future, but there is a past, and we simultaneously exist in the present and the past going all the way back. But even if you were to time travel to your past self, you would never actually understand that you did. So there's no functional knowledge of having known you did it. Anyway, I digress. We're getting long. Okay. So we think we know about the universe, right? We're probably wrong. Maybe it was just created and all these ideas are fabrications. That's called the brain in the vat theory hypothesis, which you can't really disprove, and so it's tough. But we try to just base things off of empirical data, what we can prove. Well, what we can prove so far is that fusion exists. We know where fusion exists. In the sun, you have hydrogen, and then you have an area of fusion where helium gets created, and that is hydrogen slams together, and then, I'm simplifying things, but then becomes helium, which has 2 electrons, and more than that too, but I digress. The point is, we know what happens. That is, free energy at a fundamental level as we understand it comes together, coalesces, and forms more complicated particles. What we can see in the universe, and we do observe this, is that particles come together, elements come together, fusion happens. Fusion results in different elements interact and make compounds, and ultimately at some point, for some reason, we get self-replicating proteins. Yeah, we don't really know how. What's the origin of life? The funny thing is, it may just be a fundamental force of nature. There need not be any great explanation of lightning struck a vat of primordials. Well, it's like a fire starting. Fire starts when these conditions are met. It is a fundamental element of the code of the universe, whatever that may be. So we can see that there is essentially a yin-yang of the universe. There is entropy, the constant move towards total decay in the heat of the universe, but there are within it self-organizing elements, which would be negative entropy. Now, they say, scientists, negative entropy can only exist so long as more entropy is created around it, perhaps. But what I can tell you is this. Based on what we think we know, there is a degree where something as simple as a quark or a particle becomes part of a larger thing and then slowly starts becoming more and more complicated. This is order and chaos. Eventually, you get self-replicating proteins. Why? I don't know. It's a kind of thing that happens on moist, warm planets, right? Like fire happens on dry planets, and then when the temperature reaches a certain amount, such that carbon and oxygen can fuse, energy gets released, and you get carbon dioxide. There's other kinds of fires too. So here on Earth, self-replicating proteins eventually start becoming single cellular organisms. We don't really know why, but life has a tendency towards survival. So when you get to the point of self-replicating proteins, the proteins that replicate better than others merge and bond, and eventually merge and bond faster and better. It's probably that at the fundamental level of self-replicating proteins, it's chaos. It's just random. Energy is bouncing off each other. Particles are connecting to other, molecules are connecting to other molecules. Some are stupid and just cease to exist. And then eventually one snaps and it worked. Pure chance. Just because the primordial mess. It may then be single cellular organisms then operate to survive, to grow and develop. Mutations result in death. More successful behaviors result in more offspring. The basis, the fundamental element of evolution. None of this says God doesn't exist. And it could quite literally be that God created code, the code of the universe, and exists within the natural law himself, just imperceivably to us right now. So what I see is this. I see a tendency towards entropy and ectropy that I would probably equate more to not yin-yang, but more like a golden ratio. There is more entropy than ectropy. So you can see the spiral that we're drifting downwards towards. But at least within this, there is some structure of order that creates life and everything around it. Where do we come to with this? You have single cellular organisms. They eventually become more complicated and they become multicellular organisms. From the bottom of reality to life, we can see energy combining to create a complex system. Ultimately, you come to singular cellular organisms, which are fairly complicated in the elements they contain, in the molecules and things like that, compounds. When they become multicellular, they are one step above in complication. Now, two different cells occupying one living entity. Eventually, you get ecosystems and patterns where life interacts with each other, creating complex systems. Humans are the highest level of complex system that we've seen thus far. Not only do we consume free energy to make more of ourselves, thus replicating, taking free energy from chaos and creating order, but we also create abstract concepts. That is, language itself. A chair, for instance. There are so many different words to describe something that could be sat upon. That's a stool. It's for stepping. Well, it's a chair, too. A step ladder, whatever. There's a table, a desk, a chair, a chifforobe, a duvier. is that one? I don't know. There's a bunch of words that we create in abstract and languages. These are constructs of complex systems that exist only in the mind. Kind of crazy if you think. Now, that presupposes, based on everything we've seen, I think it would be fair to assume that there exists beyond us a higher degree of organizational capability. If beavers, for instance, can build a dam, manipulating their environment and changing ecosystems, if squirrels plant nuts, creating a chain of trees being planted and squirrels eating seeds, this is a complex system that exists outside the confines of the individual being itself. All life is working towards organization to greater and greater degrees, and we can see it exponentially. Once you reach humans, we create materials, we create language, we create abstract concepts that don't even exist in the physical reality. I can think of things and I can explain 1 + 1 = 2, and there's no physical basis for any of this anywhere. It's just a concept in my mind. It's a true concept. Math is fairly simple, can be greatly complicated, but it exists, right? So, why would it stop with us? Well, you'd be stupid to assume that it would, wouldn't you? Yeah. The reality is, mathematically, if we want to be smart people, we'd say, probabilistically, based on what we can measure, there exists beyond humans the degree of organizational capability that we have. There is something beyond us. So let's hold on. What would that look like? If we can eat food, transform that food, that free energy, into parts of our body, merge with another human being, if you know what I mean, and make another person, we have self-replicated. We have converted free energy into a complex system. Now, we took lesser complex systems, a banana and a cheeseburger, they're organized to a certain degree, and increased the organization by then creating a person. That's the basic level of life, complex systems, making more of itself. But we can actually conceptualize and invent and create mini universes using the code of the universe. So we are now organizing beyond what basic life does. We are the highest form we've ever witnessed. What would the next degree of complex organization look like? Well, I don't think it's going to be so profound, but could it not be that following this path, the reasonable conclusion mathematically and within natural law is that you will come to an entity that can create complex systems itself? That is to say, we are taking free energy and creating a more complicated system. But what if there is an entity that reaches the highest point, or not even the highest, but a higher point, and has the ability to create systems? You see what I mean? Then that for me, as I'm reading through the philosophy, I said, heavens me. The mathematical probability dictates that there is a substantial chance of a God, as we believe it. Now, some may believe that God is the end-all, be-all, the most powerful thing. I don't know if that the math that we think we know presupposes a limit. There may be something beyond God, sure, but that does not mean that there is not a higher power which has determined in and of itself to create a system by which miniature systems are created. And what if there is something that exists beyond that? The creator of gods. Why not? Math so far has only predicted that things become gradually more complicated until we've reached the point we can conceptualize it. We would be stupid if we thought, nope, we're the end. That's it. It's just us. We are the epitome of organizational power in the universe, and that's just that. That's insane. There's no evidence to suggest it stops. We don't know what's beyond it, but the probability is that there is something much greater beyond us. To wrap it all together, my friends, it's not supernatural. It's probabilistic. So if I were to say that there exists a great being that contains and controls the conscious minds of all humans as a collective entity that we are not able to perceive, only sometimes perhaps, and it has dictated reality, and it set forth the code of the universe by which life emerged, that's not supernatural. That actually follows the basic mathematical trajectory of which we've mapped thus far, at least we think. I'll wrap it up all with, we don't know crap. We think we know a lot. Some people do. But true knowledge is knowing that you know nothing. I believe it's fair to say that if you were to estimate a Googleplex of petabytes or whatever, it's just like seemingly infinite, beyond our comprehension, bits of data, that we're one bit of that data. Now, I believe based on the data that we've already put together with yes and no, zeros and ones, and computer code, that we do exist in a higher form of this code. But I will wrap it up as this video has gone long with one thing that's a bit simple. It's a bit simple for all of you. If computer code exists within the confines of this universe, we are basically creating projections of what the universe already is. That is to say, the functions of video games and virtual reality simulations, it's a projection of what already exists. So we are living in some form of exactly what it is we create to a higher degree. And the last thing, one more thing I'll add. If our conscious minds and what we think we know exist within reality as components of reality, that would mean we are all just pieces of the universe, no different than a rock is. And we are all, to a certain degree, entangled within the code of the universe. Is it wrong to then presume that there is some degree by which all of our consciousness is a component of a larger universal consciousness? I think so. I think it's probabilistic. But you know what? There are a lot of people who just say, if I can't see it, it's not true. If I can't map it, it doesn't exist. Hence, the dispute I have with the word supernatural. Supernatural is and always has been just a word to mean I don't know. If you saw a spaceship flying in the air 3,000 years ago, if a man was floating through the sky, they'd say it was magic powers, it was supernatural. And the dude's just wearing one of those stupid little jetpack suits. Beyond your comprehension doesn't mean it's supernatural. People, what they like to do is when they say supernatural, they mean like a man with a beard walked up and went, snapped his fingers, and like a life appeared. And they say, aha, that's supernatural. See? And I say, but why is it supernatural? Why? Because you don't understand the components of it? Well, that's stupid. There will always be, in some circumstance, an understanding of the components that make reality exist, even if it is the God force, that God wills it. Just because you can't understand it doesn't make it supernatural. It just means it's beyond our comprehension. But I don't think everything actually is, because I believe to a certain degree, there would be a way for the human mind to comprehend even things that are seemingly incomprehensible. That is to say, if someone told you to visualize 4 dimensions, you couldn't do it. Of course, many people like to imagine a tesseract, but it's a 3-dimensional, actually a tesseract is a 2-dimensional facsimile. You can make 3-dimensional models of tesseracts, but do you really understand how it is applied 4th dimensionally? So it's hard to actually visualize higher dimensions, but we can know they exist if explained to us. I'm going to wrap it up. We went long. Thanks for hanging out on this Sunday, my friends. It's been a blast. This segment was just fun philosophy, crazy talk. Maybe I'm just stupid and I'm wrong about everything, and I should give up. But I'll leave it there. Thanks for hanging out. No show tonight, of course, but we're back tomorrow. Follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. Share the show with everyone you know, and we'll see y'all then.